The band continues to be on summer vacation, so this is Tip Off. Good morning. I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz and Jazz NBA Insider. Welcome to another edition of Tip Off, the 23rd of July, whenever you might be listening. Whether it's on iTunes under Locked On Jazz at the weareutahjazz.com site, whether it's on Stitcher, wherever it might be, thanks so very much. Hope you're having a great day. Also, as always, any comments could be great. All right, well, truthfully, any good comments would be great. Bad comments would not be as good, but good comments left on any of those sites, little 5 stars here or there, helps with everything, helps our status, helps how we're displayed, helps how we're treated. You got it. It's the world we live in. Give me the good Yelp, baby. That's what everybody wants. Well, yesterday's podcast actually touched on a bunch of things that became pretty pertinent late yesterday afternoon when the Utah Jazz traded many of the non-guaranteed contracts that we talked about in yesterday's show. We talked about kind of the different ways in which the Jazz would try to get some deals done and do some things, and how they were or weren't working and what was next. And they finally, before some of the deadline on some of those deals, accomplished those trades. We'll talk about that deal. We'll revisit where the roster looks at and what's next, and then we'll take your questions, and I will try to even go back to the first day back here and try to see what questions came in on that day, and if I can get back to some of those. So a lot of this is going to be comments coming from your direction and your questions on things. We'll also touch on Trey Burke a little bit and the U.S. Select practice experience. So yesterday the Jazz traded John Lucas's non-guaranteed contract. And really, that's what they traded chits, little Vegas chits that can be traded for other things. That none of the players' names are actually relevant in this deal. It's the non-guaranteed contract of John Lucas. It's the non-guaranteed contract of Eric Murphy, and the non-guaranteed contract of Malcolm Thomas. Let's start with why the Jazz moved those 3 players. Lucas was not returning. That had become clear to anyone inside the organization. There was a report at one point the Jazz were considering it. I don't remember where that came from. I don't think that was actually ever in the play. And as I've reported, I'm not even sure the Jazz are going with a veteran point guard at this point. I think there's a feeling that this is going to be just a young group that has to come together itself. They're going to have to establish their leadership amongst themselves. Quinn Snyder's going to have to lead the way, and they're going to have to create their own relationships. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's not the third point guard doesn't just turn out to be to some extent, training camp fodder. That's too harsh, but that it's a young, aggressive, defensive-minded point guard who ends up probably playing in Idaho and may or may not even be one of the 15. Raul Neto is not likely, particularly because you don't want to start his contract at the same time as Dante Exum and Rodney Hood. So you don't want 3 players. Remember, every day we wait on Neto, or every year we waits until his rookie contract starts. So his rookie contract doesn't start. Though he's a second-round draft pick, so I take that back. I might be wrong on that. You still don't want to stack up the contracts. It may not be a rookie contract, but you still don't want to stack up his contracts and when they start because he's a second-round draft pick. So it's not the same rookie guaranteed deal as some of these other guys, but it is. You're trying to kind of space him correctly in the deals. So I don't think he's coming over this year. And so the Jazz now probably don't necessarily go with that veteran point guard. Eric Murphy was an interesting pickup with 5 days left in the season. It was really as much as anything a favor by the Jazz to the Bulls. It got them under the luxury tax. You never know when that favor comes back around. But it helped them out a great deal, and it gave us a non-guaranteed chit. Cost us almost nothing, maybe, whatever 3 days worth of that contract was, gave us the rights to have an extended look at Murphy, who we were intrigued by as a possible stretch 4, and he was not good in Summer League. Was not going to make our team. I'm not sure he's going to make the NBA. the summer league is any indicator of where he is, his shot release is not great, and his athleticism was not super. And and then the third one was Malcolm Thomas, which I think and when I got word of this trade, that was kind of my first reaction. I was like, oh, Malcolm Thomas. But then, as we talked about yesterday on the show, you suddenly realize that it's almost it was almost impossible for Thomas to make this team, and the numbers, ironically enough, were against um, him and how it's going. The numbers, because Jeremy Evans is guaranteed at 1.7, he'd have to beat out Evans. You'd have to release Evans. And there's really little chance that Malcolm Thomas is going to be so much better than Jeremy Evans that is worth it, right? I think I could make an argument that Malcolm Thomas might have some aspects to his game that's better than Jeremy Evans. But Jeremy's a pretty wonderful guy, and there's a value to that, and who he is, and how he represents himself, and how he represents the organization. So, it just that scenario needs to be playing out. So really, the Jazz traded 3 players who were not going to be on the roster. They traded 3 chits. This again kind of goes to where I was yesterday on the program, that this is the Dennis Lindsey just using every little asset and every little mechanism of the cap with Justin Zanuck to improve this team. And maybe this is a tiny, tiny one, and maybe we'll end up trading a lot of nothing for a lot of nothing. We'll get $1.3 million. Is really maybe the guarantee, which is $1.3 million. I'm sure no one's scoffing at $1.3 million. We may end up buying a draft pick at one point in time, and that's part of the $1.3 million that not league rule wise you don't get more, but just in your budget plan. Maybe that $1.3 million helps for a part of a remodel on the practice facility. Who knows what it does that helps to wins, but it's still $1.3 million. So it has value. And then it gets to the other 2 assets the Jazz got. They got another second-round draft pick. Second-round draft picks hit very rarely in this league. I've talked about that before. It's about 5%, I think, of second-round draft picks. It's about 2 or 3 a year that are able to come together. Maybe we hit on it. Maybe it's an asset in a trade. It's a piece. Nothing significant. And then we got this kid, Carrick Felix, who the Jazz do like. Recall the Jazz did not have a second-round draft pick in the draft 2 years ago. They traded it to Denver as part of, I think, the Rudy Gobert deal, if I remember correctly. Felix would have been gone by that point anyway, and I'm not saying that they would have taken him. 33 was a big surprise that he went that high in the draft. His background is kind of a great athlete who never really materialized as a player, and then at Arizona State in his final year, he clicked in and had a very, very good season, and now people are trying to figure out if they can really turn him into kind of a corner 3 and D guy. He doesn't have much of a ball handling game. He doesn't have a great deal of. He's not going to be. I don't think particularly strong coming off the pick and roll or anything like that. He might set up in the corner while the pick and roll is coming. If you can set up your offense ideally, corner 3 shooters, big, one of the bigs lifted, as we talked about the other day, the other big rolling and a ball handler coming. So he could be one of those corner 3 guys, and I think the Jazz think he's got a chance to do that fairly well. I don't want to get hopes up, but the model, and actually even what Carrick Felix referenced himself as at one point, is Bruce Bowen. All right, you're trying to find an elite athletic defender who can get in on guys, understand their defensive mind, that his defense is going to make them who they are, and then at the same time that they are going to be able to shoot the spot up 3. Our data size on Felix is limited. He played 7 games in the D League and about 7 games in the NBA, so very difficult to be able to tell you whether or not that's what you're getting and whether or not he's going to be that guy. But it's worth the flyer. So for 3 pieces that weren't going to bring us anything, we've got a future second-round draft pick, which I think in all likelihood will turn out to be a non-factor. We have frankly, we may end up trading for $500,000 or something. Who cares? Maybe it brings in a little money again. You got $1 million, and you got a player who will be on the roster next year, despite he'll be on the roster, and they like him, and they're going to give him a shot. And hey, if he goes through training camp and he's terrible, um, then that's a totally different, then things could change. But as of right now, the anticipation is that he would fit in as one of the wings. So let's revisit the roster at this point. You have Burke and Trey and Dante as your point guards. You have Burks and Carrick Felix as your shooting guards. You have Hayward and Hood as your small forwards. Cantor with Booker, Novak, and Evans as your backups, depending on need. I don't see Jeremy getting a lot of time. But, Jeremy has kind of overcome this before, where he finds a way into systems and has an impact. And, maybe we're going to find out that he doesn't set particularly effective picks. He's not very big, but maybe his role is going to have a lot of attention because of what kind of an athlete he is. Favors and Gobert are your centers. That's the way I would at least look at this team right now. That gets us to 12. Backup point guard gets you a 13. Again, I'm just not convinced that guy is actually going to be on the roster. Maybe he's going to. So it could be one of two things. He could be, if he's not this veteran point guard, I think we're all caught on it. But, frankly, John Lucas' veteran point guard role last year turned out to, I don't know what role it had. I kind of think that that guy might not exist. That may be a training camp guy who we send to Idaho, and he may never actually be officially on our NBA roster. If Ian Clark is on the roster, he's 13 as kind of your third next guard and fourth point guard, or desperation, gets you through the game, half a game if both guys sprain ankles. So I think he could be 13, and 14 could be another wing. Or we hold with this. The other aspect here is, let's be honest about what we've seen out of Dennis. We've seen this Malcolm Thomas pick up off waivers. We've seen this Eric Murphy pick up late in the year off waivers. It's clear that Dennis wants to be able to have a roster that gives him the flexibility to acquire these other pieces. There's a chance we start with 13 because as the year goes on, Dennis and his scouting staff of Dave Fredman and his college scouting staff of Walt Perrin have these players that they're intrigued by, that they want to take another look at. And I also think the other one is the Jazz have worked so very hard on free agent signing, they've had these free agent camps where 40 or 50 guys come in, and I think that's the other one. I think the Jazz would like to have a training camp with some roster spots open where Ian Clark is battling three other guys, and maybe the next Gary Neal shows up in that model. Yeah, everything Spurs, by the way. Every analogy, every comparison is Spurs. With the addition of Quinn, it has opened the floodgates of the Spurs analogies going at 100% right now. I just got a bunch of little texts, so let me see if there's anything. I don't think anything. That's NBA referenced here. We get Dwight Howard texting again about Free Palestine. That was nice. I'm not sure that's a controversy someone should step into. All right, so that's where the roster sits right now. One other note on Trey. I think we talked about his 30% shooting percentage, is 21% from three. The one thing that was very consistent coming out of everything in regards to Trey was how pleased Quinn Snyder was with his defensive effort. The commitment he made on defense. Last year, Trey really had a terrible defensive year as a rookie point guard, was overwhelmed. And he came into camp with a little leadership element to him to be able to, and to put that down and try and put an effort in defensively, and did a better job than he had in the past. I think that was a big plus for the front office. The other one I keep hearing, by the way, the murmur, is that Derek Favors is having a very good physical offseason. He stayed in Utah. He's worked hard. Dennis Lindsey, in an interview on 700 the other day, kind of revealed something that he hadn't revealed before that there's incentives in some of these guys' contracts to be able to be in Salt Lake, check in Salt Lake every now and then, and keep Salt Lake as part of their workout plan and their structure to keep them involved with Mark McCown and Isaiah Wright and our very good staff of that regard. So that was an interesting little note there from Dennis yesterday. All right, let's go to your questions from today from Billy Murphy. How much money do you think it would take for Ante Tomic to be moved over? Do you see him ever coming over? I don't know. I mean, I think we're getting close to the point where Tomic's got to decide a little bit if he really wants to come. And at 27, 28 years old, we've got to figure out how he fits. I don't see him fitting on this roster right now. And he's a little bit of a funky player right now. He's not a three-point shooter. He's not a physical presence inside. He's gotten better. He's a good ball mover. So I think there's still a chance he comes over, but I don't. I don't see it happening. And at some point, the window begins to close. He's still a trade asset, though, which is probably his most important value right now. Do the Jazz keep Carrick Felix or use the $1 million from the Cavs and just buy him out? No, it's 1.3 million, and they're not going to buy him out. They're going to expect he's going to go to training camp with a spot on the roster, and he's going to have to see what he's able to do, and from there. I know you said the Jazz might skip on a vet. What about Chauncey Billups? Why would Chauncey Billups want to come? Oh, wait, I didn't hit select. I know you said the Jazz might skip on a vet point guard. What about Chauncey Billups? Why does Chauncey want to come here on a team that's going to win 25 games or 30 at this point in his career? I mean, if he really wants to just come for the veteran minimum, he probably gets his pick of wherever he wants to go. So I don't see that matching. Doug Chang, what is the story with Canner? Is the injury more serious than we thought it was? You know, I saw that Turkish report. I get very nervous on translation on pieces, and I get very nervous on European coaches who I don't think have the access to some of the medical stuff that on these guys. There have been a lot of really bad misreports out of Europe. I don't know that that's the case here. I'm just sharing that there's a trepidation on that. For those who didn't hear it, the Turkish coach referenced a meniscus, whereas what we reported, I think, was kind of that Kobe Bryant injection stuff. Those are two different things. The injection is for meniscus stuff, you know. So, I mean, it all could be. You know, it all could be the same. We knew the day he had the injury that he would not play for the World Cup. So I don't see anything being different at this point, but I could check on that and see what's going on with that. But I don't see anything being different in that regard. This is a big year for Canner. Right? How he fits in with Quinn, I think, is going to be very curious to see what he's able to do. Taylor Cotterell, what with the offseason trades, how close do teams need to get salary-wise? Last year, we traded Biedrins, RJ, and Jefferson 15 plus for non-guarantees. Doesn't seem to be. I don't quite understand, but we had huge cap room. We just assumed all that contract last year in our cap room is what we were able to do. Patrick Day, what does adding Felix do for Ian Clark chances of making the team? If we don't hold on to Clark, what kind of players do you see us targeting to finish the roster? Oh, I mean, I don't think it. I think Ian is you know, a fifth, sixth wing and a fourth point guard at this point in his career. So I don't think it has a big impact. There's going to be somebody, one or two more people, or another player possibly in front of Ian along the way. Kevin Murphy had a decent summer league, and did a great job last year in the D League. Any chance the Jazz give him another chance? Camp? I doubt it. Decent summer leagues mean you're not good enough. Being honest. A decent summer league is against the 12th, 13th, 14th, and 15th guys of NBA rosters, and then a collection of 10 players who will never play in the NBA. If you don't have a great summer league and look better than all the other players out there, then your summer league wasn't good enough. Steve Novak could play a Matt Bonner role on our team. However, with the move toward defense does he fit in? He stretch four, play your Matt Bonner fits perfectly with the Spurs. Play your defense fundamentally, play it correctly, lift the defense, shoot your three, shoot certain types of threes in different circumstances, help with that play I talked about. I love so much the high pick and roll with two picks staggered up top, one lifting, one dropping. Pull the defense out like that with your corner three shooters, make the floor huge. Steve Novak the Jazz trade for Steve Novak because they like him. With the move we saw yesterday, it would seem the asset accumulation mode is in full swing. Can you talk about why the Jazz fans should temper their expectations on getting wins next season? Well, I mean, at some point we're gonna have to move out of at some point we're going to have to move out of asset accumulation mode into building our franchise. But that may be delayed till Dante Exum's 21 years old. I mean, the drafting of Exum may have actually delayed our process here. We may really be talking about Exum and next year's number one pick as our two key pieces. Gordon and Favors as core pieces that are then at that point very mature and bring us along, and then we hit through. I don't know how it's going to play out, but this roster, as it's constructed right now, is even more developmental than last year's roster. According to the Turkish national team coach, Enes had an operation on his meniscus. It wasn't a simple one. He apparently had to have some stitches on it. He said that this is not allowed to do anything for 2 months. I think I just commented on this, that I read the same piece. I get nervous about translation. I'm not sure why. He would know more. I haven't heard that. I don't even know what stitches on the meniscus mean, frankly. He may be right, but there's really nothing new on this. I think that from the very beginning on this, or there might be something new, but he was never expected to play for the European team, Turkish national team, at any point once he had this injury. So, and also remember, there's not a good history between Enes and the Turkish national team. So there's a lot of stuff there that I think could go either way and have all sorts of different. I don't know. I have great trepidation on doing too much based on their reports, I guess is what I'm trying to tell you. If that is not obvious to you. All right, let me, I got like 4 minutes. There were a million questions I didn't get to on the first day that I came back, which was July 21st. So let me see if I can run through let me see if I can find, I got to make sure I don't play I'm pulling up that podcast for you, and I couldn't do it until I was at this point in the show, or else it would have technically screwed everything up. So let me see if I can get this up. Oh, a plugin stopped. Stop plugin. We'll see what happens here. Could not load. Did you want? Oh, they could load the questions though. Actually, that's even better. Let's see. I should go on vacation more, said Nick Jacobson. Matthew Schneider had a good question. Watching the Summer League, some of the new offense looks to me like everyone on the team will benefit from it. Is there a player who currently on the roster may not benefit from it? Well, I think it's going to be interesting for Cantor and Favors because it just doesn't look as though they're going to have post-up opportunities in the same way that they have in the past. I just don't think we're running things out of the post. We're going to be running everything from the outside in. And so it's going to be really interesting to me to see how Cantor fits. Cantor, we think of Cantor as a very good jump shooter and with great touch. The numbers actually don't back it up tremendously. He comes out as pretty average. Will he become really good? Will Cantor pick and pop and then stop ever going to the post? Will Cantor run the floor? Will Cantor roll to the basket correctly? He's fundamentally not been very good at that in his career. Cantor, I think, is the one who's going to have a very interesting time. He's going to have to be much more detail-oriented. He's going to have to space the floor correctly. He's going to have to do things at a higher level, and there's going to be a high expectation for him to get these things right. So I think that's going to be, curious to see how that plays out for Canner, he's the one to me looking at this offense I think is going to be interesting. I thought my instinct is that Alec Burks can be fabulous, and then I was surprised to see that Alec Burks's pick and roll numbers weren't very good. So he's going to have to improve. And Alec has a tendency to catch, dribble, then decide what he's going to do. He's going to have to get out of that. He's going to have to make his decisions earlier. So I think those two, probably not surprised that they're a step younger than the other guys. You're probably asking about and what's going to happen with them. Question about Burks and Cantor impact by Hayward's deal. The only impact is just how crazy the market is. And as I talked about yesterday, I talked to an exec who told me he thinks there could be as many as 90 max deals in this league. I think that's probably too many, but what he's figuring is every team's going to have 3. So I think that's going to be very hard. I think the impact is that the market's going to be nuts for Cantor and Burks because right now it seems to be nuts for everyone, and it's really particularly nuts for wing offensive playmakers, and that's what happened. If you look, it wasn't crazy for point guards. Lowry didn't get crazy money. Bledsoe hasn't got a deal done. It was crazy for playmaking wings. I think it's very important. With that. Dennis Lindsey mentioned having Ennis shoot more threes this year. Do you think he's ready for that? I think the question is where he shoots them. Is he a corner 3 shooter? Is he able to come out and on this pick and roll I've talked about and play on the top, on the high quadrant 3? That I think will be a little bit of the issue, whether he's just a pick and pop guy. And then whether can he make some plays off of those, I think will be an opportunity as well. In that. All right, that wraps us up. There are still more questions there from the other day. I'll try to get to them tomorrow. Thank you very much for tuning in. Have a good one. We'll be back with you tomorrow, but no tip-off on Friday. So you'll get a Pioneer Day edition tomorrow. See ya.